Hey, everybody, this is Chris
and Cathy
from PetAbility Podcast. We wanted to take a minute to thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate every listener and are grateful for this platform.
Please help us share our vision by subscribing to PetAbility Podcast through your favorite streaming app. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at PetAbility Podcast and share our content on social media.
You can also support the show by making a donation. Simply go to our website at petabilitypodcast.buzzsprout.com and click on the heart symbol at the top of the page. Thanks for listening.
We hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to PetAbility. I'm your host, Cathy Simons.
And I'm your host, Chris Cranston. Our podcast provides interviews and information to help your pets live their best lives.
Hey, Chris, how are you today?
I am excellent, Cathy. How's it going?
Wonderful. We're doing wonderful over here. Hey, listen, I had an idea for this show today. Would you like to hear about it?
I would love to hear about it.
I think since this is our first show, we should talk to the audience a little bit about introducing ourselves and telling a little bit about what the show is about and who we are.
Well, I love to talk about me. How about you?
Oh, I love to talk about me. There's nothing better. But enough about you. What do you think about me?
And there you go.
And
cut. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think about our journeys, our parallel journeys. And when did we meet? I think it was back in 2003, if I do my math right.
It has been quite some time now. I would say probably 2002, 2003. Mm-hmm. At that time, I had just finished my coursework at the University of Tennessee in canine rehabilitation, and I was getting ready to sit for my exam, I believe, when we met. So I was in the very first graduating class at the University of Tennessee for canine rehab, and so that was really exciting to me because I was one of the first of 36 people in the country to take the class, to take the coursework, and to sit for the exam. So it was an exciting time for me.
And not to be taken lightly. I mean, it is an arduous, grueling process to go through that and get the certification, as I know from my experience a couple years later. But also kudos to you and your workplace for being so forward thinking and being one of the first facilities to have rehabilitation, small animal rehabilitation in the country.
It was very exciting, and it didn't take very much discussion with our veterinarian, Dr. McMillan. I had worked with her for many, many years at the MSPCA. At that time, I believe it was Angel Memorial Animal Hospital, but I believe it's Angel Animal Medical Center now. And she was the radiologist, and I worked in the radiology department, and I felt like, maybe this is, I see a lot of dogs radiographically that are having that hip dysplasia, congenital, problems, pain, and recovering from surgery. And I think it was an easy transition really from radiology and my continued interest in anatomy and function to sort of roll into canine rehabilitation.
I would agree. I felt that same way being a physical therapist for people. So I'd always known when I got done with PT school at the University of Iowa, I'm from Iowa originally. So if you detect my nasally Midwestern twang, that is why I try my best. But so I went into orthopedics, sports medicine. Most of my PT career with people was at the University of Colorado, actually, in their student health center. And when I moved out to the Boston area in 2002, I thought it would be a good chance to maybe do something different. My job in Colorado was very utopic, but I thought this is a great chance, right? Moving across the country, what else can I do? And it was a very cerebral decision for me. But also an emotional one. So this is a true story. This is actually what happened. So I move out here. It's expensive to live in the Boston area. I didn't have a job. I didn't want to go right back into human PT. And so I found myself drinking Coke and eating Cheez-Its and watching Animal Planet. And Animal Planet had just kind of started out at that time. And one of the first shows was Emergency Vets. And so I'm watching Animal Planet and I just start bawling, right, over the heart-wrenching stories on Emergency Vets. And so I thought, I need to listen to this, this maybe is telling me something. So started investigating, and lo and behold, that's when I learned that there was this certification, but I didn't feel like I had all the experience. So that I needed to just enter into the program. So what did I do? I started calling around, and I called our friend Cathy. And you were like the only one to call me back. I mean, I only called like 3 people, but you were like excited. You're like, yeah, come on over. And I think I ended up volunteering over 200 hours with you and in your wonderful facility, and getting my feet wet, as they say, and learning all about dogs and rehab, and then going on to get certified in 2004. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I was there. I can vouch for it. I remember too. I was there. One of the things that that was such a wonderful collaboration for me, as far as, I'm coming from the animal veterinary side, and Chris coming from the physical therapy side, as one of our very first patients was very dramatic. We had a dog that was what we would call, I guess in human terms, quadriplegic from
Prince.
Yeah. And I'm going to use the word stroke in this case, but from a stroke-like event. And honestly, I think that it was the collaboration of coming from 2 places with our expertise that was so important and instrumental in rehabbing this dog, because we had so many ideas from so many, from my side and from your side as well, as far as not only his physical therapy plan, but his medical plan. And then the other thing that was really important for him was, how are we going to handle him as far as his emotional life goes. So we both got that. We both got that. Not only did we have to get this dog up and walking and get him back to enjoying his life and his love of life, but also had to find a way to treat him medically. And we also had to try to find a way to treat him sort of in an environmental enrichment sense as well. And I think that all those pieces that came together for him were instrumental in getting this dog to walk again. And I do remember the first day that dog took a step on his own, unassisted. And I was like, this is great. This is wonderful. And I went into the back office and just sort of collapsed in a ball and cried, because it was just an amazing experience. I didn't want to show so much, like, I knew this was going to happen, and I knew the dog would. I just didn't know when. And it was an overwhelming experience. And that dog got many, many more years of good time with his owners, wonderful, wonderful people, and got many more good years.
Absolutely. I think that was a case that affected all of us, and there was a huge team, as you implied, going into his care and support, and the owners were just all in and wonderful and did everything that we asked of them. And ironically, you were talking about, not a big leap from radiology to doing rehab, and nor was it a big leap for me doing physical therapy. It was just applying that to a different species. But what I did find interesting was that when I was working with people, I was terrified of the neurological conditions, working with pediatrics, working with head injuries, working with spinal cord injuries and so forth. But when I have since worked with pets, I love the neuro component, because they get so much better so much of the time. And
so
that is
rewarding.
So rewarding. Yeah. So gratifying. Yes.
I agree. Well, I'm glad we met, Chris. That was, and then I think shortly after that, I started treating a goose, and I was like, hey, Chris,
well,
my next patient's a goose. Maybe you can help me with that too. But it was wonderful collaboration. I agree.
And I kind of wanted to ask you, because I went into, my path and how I ended up in animal rehab. When did you decide to work with animals?
Oh, Chris, you don't decide to work with animals. You're called to work with animals. You don't decide to it's a calling.
It's a calling.
It's a calling. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think that a lot of technicians could probably vouch for this as well. Many of us are called, probably not as many stay in as long as I have, because I'm going on probably 30 years now, into my veterinary technician career. But it's definitely a calling. I mean, there's no technician ever that said, I'm going to get into this because I'm interested in earning a lot of money and working not very many hours and not putting in too much effort.
There's a lot of burnout with veterinary technicians, veterinary nurses, for those exact reasons. And probably one of your survival skills has been that you have morphed from, maybe being in the trenches in the early days to, seeking out this rehabilitation angle and niche, and getting a lot of, satisfaction from that. Although there's compassion fatigue in
Yeah.
all that we do.
In all aspects of care, I believe there's compassion fatigue. The average lifespan, I think, of techs in small practice is 5 to 7 years. So
wow.
it's tough. It's a tough job, and I would say certainly, it was a calling to me. I tried other things. I was stunningly bad at it, and I was always drawn back to, no matter what I did, I was always drawn back to animals. But I have a drive. And I also get excited and passionate about not only the care of animals, but being their advocate. And I also really have an interest in how I affect their lives, or how their lives are lived emotionally. Like, not only do I want your dog to be better health-wise, I want your dog to have a good, joyful life as well. And rehab was the perfect package for me, because rehab is about function, but it's not all about function. So that's assessing, not only assessing function, but assessing fear, assessing the dog's home life, assessing what the owner can do, assisting the owner in getting their dog back to the things that they love to do, and instilling confidence, and just getting the dog back to their normal state, but also to a joyful state, to enjoy their life.
Yeah, I really like that you use the word joyful. I think that's true. And what is joyful is very individual,
Right.
for the pet and their owners and so forth. And, one of the things that irritates me is that when I was especially a PT with humans, and I finally saw the light, but it's like, oh, physical therapy, pain and torture, no pain, no gain. And that's so far from what we do, because one of our first goals with any pet is to make them comfortable and less painful, and certainly for the person too. Now, sometimes there may be some discomfort as a means to an end, but as you were saying with the pets, the whole process too, we try to make joyful in the sense that they don't know that they're exercising even, they're getting treats, they're, playing games, their lives are enriched, they get to go out of the house and come to the clinic, or have a guest, me or you, go into their home and, hang out with them. And so, the perspective from the animal, I think, is very different than some of the psycho-emotional overlay that we tend to put on these things as people.
Right. I completely agree, because I would probably tell you I don't get any, complaints from animals, because they can't complain. Of course, they can't tell you. But if you engage them in a certain way, they don't even know they're exercising. It's fun. And with that becomes, I think, the same thing that probably happens with people. That exercise, you get that serotonin coming, flooding in, all those chemicals that flood the brain with happy juice. You know what I mean?
Yep, I do.
That happens with dogs. And there are often times that, clients will tell me that they get to the clinic and, they're 2 stops away from getting to the clinic, and their dog's already, oh my God, we're going to the clinic. Because it's fun. And it's rewarding, and it's stimulating, and they get to have special time with their owners. So that's not only, with you and I, but with their, with their people as well. So, who wouldn't want to go and have the entire focus be on them, right? You get food, you get praise, you get...
That's a given for you and me, of
and
course.
Me, I know. Food and praise and love and telling you how great you are. Can you imagine if you went to the doctor and you showed up in the waiting room and somebody went, Chris, look how great you are. Here's a cookie. God, you look so great. You're good at everything.
She took a step. Yes, yes.
You're the best. You're totally the best, right? It doesn't happen. But that's what our animals enjoy, and that's how we engage them. And it's all part of the process. It's all part of the process of instilling confidence and engaging the dog and getting them to move. And it all relates to function. It all relates to function and quality of life.
That's what we're all about.
I agree.
I'm going to go a little off topic or in a slightly different direction. Tell me about you're from around here, right?
Yes,
meaning the New England area, I should say.
Yeah, I grew up actually the first part of my life, the first very parts till I was about 13 in White Plains, New York, and then from White Plains, New York, my family moved to Norton, Massachusetts. And if Norton, Massachusetts sounds boring to you, that's because it is.
Sorry, all you Norton, Massachusetts listeners out there.
You know what? I loved it. It was great. It was rural. It was just a shock for me because I'd grown up in the city and then moved to a very rural part of the country in Massachusetts. And growing up in Norton was actually fantastic. It was just, you know, it was lots of land and lots of playing in the woods and lots of kids and lots of fun. And so ultimately, of course, it was the best, you know, move we could have made. But yeah, it was a bit of a shock. And then that's sort of where, you know, my parents told me that if we moved from New York and we moved to Massachusetts, I could get a cat. Well, long story short, I had 4 cats, right?
Awesome.
4 cats.
Because that was actually going to be my next question. It's like,
4 cats,
so
right?
what pets did you have when you were growing up?
And here's the best part. Those cats, my father kept saying, these cats are only here on a trial basis. And they were there on a trial basis for about 18, 19 years.
There you go. There you go.
Right. And that's kind of what, I think that's where my sort of my journey began. That's where the calling started. You know, those animals were very central to our lives. We all love those cats. We all took care of those cats. We still talk about those cats to this day, and how they influenced us. And for me, it not only made me a more compassionate person or a more caring person, or maybe, you know, even more empathetic, but I think it just made me overall a better technician, you know, to have a pet and to have an owner of a pet and to understand the importance of that pet in the family life.
That bond that's created.
That bond. Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was going to ask you about, you know, maybe some of your other pets, because I know you've had guinea pigs, you're a pug lover, and so forth. So from the cats, where did you go?
Well, there's always been a menagerie of animals in and out of my home, you know, birds and guinea pigs and rabbits and so forth. But after I was married, my husband, in 1999, we got our first pug. And that's pretty much when the world changed, Chris. I don't
For the better, of course.
I don't remember anything that happened after that. No, that became a different relationship. That was the very first dog that we had, Buddha. And he was amazing. He was that once in a lifetime dog, you know. We just loved him like he was, you know, like we had always had him. And we were fortunate enough to have him for quite some time. We had him for almost 15 years. But he went blind at the age of 7, which was very traumatic for everyone. And this is sort of what inspired me to write about living with blind dogs. So in 2010, I started writing and publishing about living with a blind dog and what the experience was like for living with a dog that had a visual impairment. And that was very cathartic for me as well, because it was so traumatic for me. And I understand that, you know, for owners now that this is very traumatic for them as well. And, you know, I can see myself in the exam room many times talking to clients whose dogs have gone blind and telling them that, you know, their dog was going to be okay. And that's because I truly believe their dog would be okay, but I didn't tell them how. I didn't tell them how that process was going to happen. And so that's why it was so important for me to write the book, Blind Devotion, Enhancing the Lives of Blind and Visually Impaired Dogs.
Yes, and that is an excellent, excellent book. I have recommended it to many people, whether they have blind dogs or not, actually. And those that have read it have come back to me unsolicited and said how much they benefited from reading the book, how much it helped them, how well written it is, etc. So, you know, I'd encourage all of you to check it out. And I remember Buddha very well. I guess I didn't realize that he was your first pug.
Oh, he was the first pug that we had, and he was, oh gosh, he was the king. You know, I'd bring him to work. Oh my goodness, he had people waiting on that hand and foot. That dog had people wrapped around his paw, hand and foot.
You know what they say about, like, you know, never name a dog Lucky because they'll be very unlucky.
Yeah.
But Buddha definitely, you know, lived up to his name. That was a very apt name for him because, like you said, it's like, you know, the fan and, you know, feeding him, I'd say grapes, but we all know those aren't good for dogs, but you get the idea.
Yeah, you know, that dog never had a bad day in his life.
Yeah, awesome.
You know, and shortly after we, you know, about 8 or 9 months after we lost him, we adopted a dog named Chopper, who we had in hospice care here for 6 months before he passed from cancer.
Also another pug?
Wonderful dog. And then after Chopper, we adopted Digger, who was very much like Buddha. He was already blind from sudden acquired retinal degeneration syndrome. And he had come up for in rescue organization, in pug rescue. And I don't think people, you know, there weren't a lot of applicants for him because he was blind. And my husband and I were like, no, we don't care.
Yeah,
you know,
been there, done that.
We've been there, done that, and we're going to take, you know, we'll take him on. And yeah, he was a wonderful dog. Gosh, he was wonderful, and he adapted very, very well.
And Digger is the fodder for your children's book.
He was. He really was. It's sort of loosely based on Digger's own adoption, the book Watching Out for Digger. Typically, you know, I read to kids that are about like that 4 to 6 age. They're really all in on that. So the book is largely about, you know, a blind dog getting adopted, and the story is happy, of course, because the family adopts him and they love him just, you know, just the way he is. And when I say loosely based on his adoption, I do mean loosely, because he wouldn't put up, the real Digger doesn't put up with shenanigans. He's a straightforward guy, right? He's a straightforward guy, but the Digger in the story is having a lot of fun with his kids who adopted him, and they didn't care he was blind. They made the accommodations.
That is a very, I think, appropriate children's book, you know, in this day and age, and accepting differences and understanding, again, that just because whether it's a person or an animal is different doesn't make them less.
Exactly. And just because your dog is broken, or not broken, just because your dog is blind or deaf or in a wheelchair doesn't mean that they're broken, and doesn't mean that they're not capable of being integrated into your family and having, you know, a joyful existence or an interesting life. So yeah, I think that's an important message, and I hope it translates to how we treat each other. I hope it translates to how we treat people, you know, with kindness and tolerance. So now, Chris, the bigger question here is, when are you going to write a book about Baxter and Julep? When are you gonna?
Never. I don't know if I have the patience to actually write. And I've also been told that when I do write, it's very complicated writing, you know, big, long sentences with big, long words. And I don't know if it would be that enjoyable for folks to read, but that's on the back burner. That's why I'm doing this podcast. I'm much better at talking than I am at writing.
Maybe they should just put together a picture book. That I think people would enjoy that.
There you go. I just learned about graphic novels. That was a whole new concept.
Really?
So yeah, so maybe I could do a Julep and Baxter, who are my little Cavaliers. So Cathy's breed of choice is pugs, and mine is Cavalier King Charles Spaniels. I always say it's a long name for a little dog, but on numbers 2 and 3, they're the twins, as I fondly refer to them. But yeah, maybe they could be the subject of a graphic novel.
Oh, they're wonderful. I adore them. I adore them. They're wonderful. They're wonderful. And I think that the combination of all of these experiences from having our own dogs, and they're coming from the physical therapy and coming from veterinary medicine, just you know, is what the draw is for, I think, both of us. You know, we have pets. We know that people love their pets. We know that they're part of the family, and we can relate to that, and we can certainly empathize when people's animals are not well. So, Chris, I know you and I worked together for many years together at the Sterling Impression Animal Rehab Center. But can you tell us a little bit about your journey, about after you left Sterling Impression? Where did your path take you?
I remember that was a sad, sad day when I had to tell you that I was moving on. We were breaking up.
I was crushed. It's the Beatles.
No, actually, you were very, very supportive, because I got an incredible opportunity to start the physical rehabilitation service for one of the large emergency and multi-specialty facilities in the Boston area. And how I'd come to that place was that I actually worked with quite a few of the doctors in doing the case studies that are required for our sort of certification in canine rehabilitation. And so I kept in touch with them, and they were growing, and one of their next steps was to bring in physical therapy to support their surgery, orthopedic, neurology, etc. departments. And so that was in 2006, and I was there till 2009, and we grew the department from just me part-time to 4 practitioners. And so it was very, very exciting. And then I got wind that someone in the community was selling a business that she used to swim dogs. And she didn't have any credentials in a medical or veterinary way, but it was somewhat of a turnkey business. So I purchased that in 2009 because it had always been my dream to have a standalone, autonomous physical rehabilitation facility, and that was Flow Dog. And I successfully founded and grew Flow Dog over the years, and incredibly sold that to Angel Animal Medical Center, who you referred to earlier, which is the longest standing, continuously operating veterinary hospital in the United States, maybe even the world. I'm not sure, but that was quite a feather in my cap when they were interested in buying Flow Dog. And so that was in 2017. And now I'm semi-retired and teaching workshops and podcasting and working part-time, consulting and at a holistic practice and so forth. So that's where I am today.
What made you, what was the deciding factor in wanting to do the podcast, Chris? Do you have any feelings about how we came to be, PetAbility? Do you have any thoughts on?
I do have thoughts.
I'd love to hear them. I'd love to hear them.
Again, for me, things tend to be rather spontaneous, and it's like, hey, I've got some time on my hands. Let's do a podcast. So yeah, we were sitting over lunch one day, kind of catching up after you'd been on a journey around the United States with your husband and coming back to the area. Is that right, Cathy?
That's correct. Yeah, it was a wonderful trip.
And we were trying to think, what's next for each of us, because we're admittedly too old to be crawling on the ground with these 200-pound dogs and or stooping over a dachshund in an underwater treadmill. We've paid our price, our dues for that. So yeah, so the idea of a podcast was born, and we've continued to work on it and bring it to this point. So we're very, very happy about that.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it too. And I've always had a great respect and admiration for your work with animals, and your drive, And so I was really excited when you said that you would partner with me when we were going to do this podcast, because I thought, yep, this is great. This is a wonderful collaboration for somebody who's in the top of their field, and it was exciting for me to hear you say, yeah, I'll do that with you.
Aw, shucks, Cathy. You're going to bring a tear to my eye.
Flattery.
We'll get you everywhere. Well, and it's ironic that you say that, because had you not called me back in 2002 or whenever that was, it's like a sliding doors moment, and my life could be drastically different if I hadn't been supported along the way, but especially in those early days, because you and all the folks at Windhover, which became Sterling Impression, had my back and helped me to complete my case studies and get all those hours of experience. I know I wouldn't be here today. So you gave me that confidence to get started, and here we are.
Thanks, Chris. That was very nice. Let me ask you this. In your lifetime here, in your journey with animals, we went back to what I had when I was growing up as a kid. We did not cover what animals and pets you had when you were growing up.
Well, to say pets,
I would like. I'm looking for a specific story. Actually,
I know which one you're after. I do. Yeah, and I was going to say, to say pets is probably a little bit of a strong word. Growing up, I had a variety of cats and dogs, which were our family's pets, and of course, loved them, and was a primary caregiver, brushing and trimming their nails and training and all of that stuff. But growing up in Iowa, you often ended up with animals in your life that maybe were unsolicited or unexpected. I remember my uncle would go down in the well on his farm, and he often came up with a salamander that he would then give to me, and I would have for a day or two, and then I knew in order for it to live and survive that I needed to put the salamander back in the well. And then there were those, I remember some family friends that had a turtle, and of course they no longer wanted to take care of it, so who did they call upon? Me. And then there was the neighbor who ran over the rabbit's nest, and so I tried to care for the bunnies that had survived, and also had a big white rabbit named Snowball for a time. But I know the story you're looking for is about the duck, isn't it, Cathy?
It is, Chris. And as we're talking, I'm not sure that you realize this, but there was your calling. You were called. That was it. That was it.
Okay, maybe I just don't recognize
You didn't
that.
answer the phone.
I'm not in tune. Yes, I'm not that in tune with those things.
You were
So
called.
yes.
I'd love to hear about your other pets. Yes.
Yeah.
Your other.
So I also had a duck for a time. And again, now you have to remember, this is like 1974, 75, rural Iowa. And a big deal was that our town, Jefferson, hosted the Greene County Fair. And the fairs are a big deal. So you had all the livestock stuff, and I'd ride my bike down and go through all the barns. But then you had the midway, right, where you had all the rides and the games. Well, back in those days, you could pitch a nickel into a goblet, and if your nickel stuck, you got to bring home a baby duckling.
Oh my goodness.
So needless to say, I spent over $2 in nickels and got my duckling. And so I wrap him up. It's kind of like one of those ET moments where I'm in like my hooded sweatshirt, and I wrap him up in my sweatshirt, and I bicycle home, and it's dark, and my mom worked nights. And so I'm like, well, what do I do with this little duckling? So I get a shoebox, and I get, a towel, and I make a little bed, and it's getting late. And so I put the duckling, who I named Peep, in my closet with the light on, and go to sleep, and thinking everything's fine. And I remember being woken up a few hours later, and my mom's like, Chris, do you have something to tell me? And this duckling, I'm sleeping through it, but it's beep, 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 and out of the closet, and thus the name was very appropriate. But he grew into a handsome duck that imprinted on me, and we'd walk around the neighborhood, and I went to the local ag store and figured out what to feed him, and I built him this lovely enclosure for our backyard. And yeah, so you're right, I may have been called.
You totally got called. You totally got called. You got to answer that phone, girl. You got called.
Well, do you think we blabbered long enough for our audience? They know us a little bit better?
I know, and I love that duck story so much. I can't even tell you, I love that story. Yes, I think so. I think that this is a wonderful introduction for our audience, and find out where we're coming at, and we're hoping that with our combination of experience that we're going to be reaching a wide variety of pet owners, and be able to share experience with them.
Yes, as Cathy said, we're definitely excited to reach a larger audience and share our mutual and individual experiences that we've had over the years with various pets and animals in a professional capacity. Hopefully you'll each learn from our expertise, because as our tagline says, we definitely want to help your pets to live their best lives.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our show. Follow us on Facebook or on Instagram at PetAbility Podcast.
For more information about Cathy's books and living with blind dogs, please go to enableyourpet.com. Thank you, and please tune in next time.